Thank you for joining our Career Compass webinar today, a six-part series from MLA's Interim Legal Talent team. Today we will focus on partnering with your recruiter. My name is Heather Nielsen, and I'll be your technical moderator here today behind the scenes. I work on the marketing team here at Major Lindsey in Africa, and I'm excited to be hosting this session today with my colleagues Katelyn Braun, Heather Fiorella, Jennifer Haas, and Amber Abousamra. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items briefly. So right now you should all be able to see the screen and hopefully hear my voice. The phone lines, however, are muted, so although you can hear me, we cannot hear you. That said, you can still ask us questions at any time, and we encourage you to do so. At the top right of your screen is the GoToWebinar panel. Just open up the console, type a question, and hit submit. Feel free to submit questions at any time. Your questions are anonymous, and your name will not be shared with the rest of the audience. Today's webinar will be approximately 30 minutes of best practices, and will allow plenty of times for Q&A. If we don't get to your question during today's webinar, Katelyn, Heather, Jennifer, or Amber, or another member of our Interim Legal Talent team will reach out to you directly. Lastly, we are recording this webinar, and it will be available on our website in the next few days. We will also provide a quick survey at the end of the webinar that we hope that you will complete. It's short and about 2 to 3 minutes tops. Before I turn this over to the ladies for brief introductions, I wanted to give you a little background on who Interim Legal Talent is. Interim Legal Talent offers experienced attorneys and legal professionals access to long-term consulting opportunities within Fortune 500 legal departments and AM Law 200 firms. While Major Lindsey in Africa has been around for more than 35 plus years, MLA's Interim Legal Talent team was established back in 2010. We now have 40 plus recruiters worldwide, operate out of 12 offices globally, and last year filled over 410 assignments. We offer both part-time and full-time consulting opportunities so that you can explore the opportunities that best fit into your professional and personal needs. Now that I've told you a little bit about who we are, I'd like to turn this over to my colleagues for brief introductions on who they are. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Heather Fiorella, and I'm a Managing Director in MLA's Interim Group. I have been with MLA for 10 years, and prior to joining, I was a litigation attorney at a boutique firm in Connecticut.
Hi all, my name is Jennifer Haas and I joined MLA in 2014. I'm currently a Managing Director of Candidate Development within the Interim Group. I'm based in our New York office and cover the New York and New Jersey market. And prior to joining MLA, I was a litigator in Chicago.
Hi everyone, I'm Amber Abousamra. I'm a director with MLA's Interim Legal Talent team in New York. Prior to joining MLA last year, I was litigation attorney in Chicago and New York.
Hi, my name is Katelyn Braun, and I'm a Managing Director in the Basking Ridge, New Jersey office. I joined MLA in 2017 and previously worked in-house as corporate counsel and with various law firms in the New Jersey area. Now that my colleagues and I have had a chance to introduce ourselves, I will begin by laying out the agenda for today's webinar for everyone. Thank you again for joining our Career Compass webinar focused on partnering with your recruiter. Whether you have recently found yourself back on the job market or are considering a move from your current legal position, finding that next opportunity can sometimes appear to be a daunting, time-consuming, and overwhelming task. One simple but effective connection that can help you streamline your job search process is that of an experienced legal recruiter. My colleagues and I will be discussing how forming a strong relationship with an experienced recruiter is a critical advantage in your job search and the benefits that they provide. We will talk about the importance of communication and availability when working together, how to set specific career goals, understanding and level setting your job search expectations, and how to be proactive in making the best plan moving forward together. I will start by covering how and why you should build a relationship with a legal recruiter to help your job search. Direct, consistent, and candid communication between recruiters and job seekers is crucial to having a successful working relationship. In order to make the most of your relationship with a recruiter, you must first understand why a partnership with a recruiter is valuable and how to communicate in the most effective way. Recruiters are placed in a unique position where they have direct access and contacts with the hiring firm or corporation, either through HR, talent acquisition, and the hiring managers, and they are able to act almost as an extension of that hiring company. Due to that connection, recruiters have the intimate knowledge about each job opportunity that they are working on. They know things like the work environment, the company culture, job satisfaction levels, and other key details that are not typically shared on a job posting. This insight into the hidden market also allows for job seekers to receive real-time updates on their candidacy throughout the application, interview, and offer stages. Recruiters will not only ensure that your resume is seen and not placed into the hundreds of applications within the company's online portal, but they will act as an advocate in your job search by speaking beyond the words of your resume. They are able to push your candidacy further along than if you were to just apply on a job board. Most often, companies will rely heavily on recruiters' expertise and impressions when making difficult hiring decisions. Moreover, recruiters have these relationships with multiple hiring managers at one time and can best situate your candidacy across various opportunities that match your skill set. By partnering with a recruiter, it will not only make the application process more efficient and save you time from searching job boards yourself, but you will also be provided with early access to jobs that become available, sometimes even hidden opportunities that are not posted by that company. Now that we understand the value behind partnering with a recruiter, it's important to know the most effective way to reach out and communicate with them. Keeping the channels of communication open and keeping both the recruiter and candidate updated on any developments on both ends of the relationship is key to a successful working partnership. Communication is a two-way street. Be sure you are sharing as much important information with your recruiter as necessary for them to act as an advocate in your job search. Examples of this would be, what are your driving factors for leaving your current role? What are your salary expectations? What is a realistic timeline for when you could start a new role? And what are some responsibilities that you are looking to take on in your new position? You can also expect for your recruiter to communicate just as often with updates and feedback. Honesty and transparency is critical when speaking about your job search so that your recruiter knows exactly what you are looking for and can best position you for success with their client. Providing misleading or false information on your experience or salary expectations will eventually come up and cause issues that could risk you your new position. Keeping your recruiter up to date on any changes in your employment, other interviews that you have going on, or even competing offers allows for them to be on the same page at all times. Engaging in a new job search requires the ability to adapt to changes in the market or changes in your current role, but as long as you and the recruiter are on the same page and working towards the same goal, those changes should be non-issues. Sometimes looking for a job quickly becomes a full-time job. Remember that your recruiter is an ally that you can lean on to do much of the heavy lifting and securing an interview for you. But when the time comes to communicate those updates, understand that you do need to be available and provide some flexibility during the workday. Recruiters might need to call you during work hours or after work hours, or even schedule a phone interview with a client while you're at the office. Understand that flexibility when interviewing and when speaking with your recruiter will be critical to making a good impression on clients, and also for your recruiter to move you quickly through the process. For example, if you are consistently unavailable to speak with a recruiter when they have updates for you, or unable to take time off from your current job to interview, that lack of flexibility hinders your candidacy and ultimately delays you in securing a new job. It's important to mention that you can certainly set boundaries with your recruiter of when you cannot be reached. But by going into a job search without being somewhat flexible with your time, it may not produce a favorable outcome. Some key takeaways that are important to remember as you build a relationship with a recruiter is to keep in consistent and candid communication. Proactively reach out to a recruiter on LinkedIn and start the conversation. Let them know that you are actively seeking a new opportunity. Be transparent and honest about your experience, your qualifications, salary expectations, and targeted industries so that your recruiter is well equipped to match you with the best opportunity. Be available to speak regularly and allow for some flexibility with your time when interviewing. Provide real-time updates to your recruiter should things change in your job or expectations so that your recruiter can adjust their search as well. And lastly, be patient and trust the process. Partnering with a recruiter is a valuable resource that should alleviate the stress, the frustration, and the unknown that occurs during a job search. Having trust in the partnership that you create will ultimately allow for a successful working relationship. Throughout this partnership, you will have an ally in your corner throughout your entire job search. A good recruiter will not only work with you on specific opportunities in real time, but will also mentor and assist you as you navigate setting long-term and short-term goals, which my colleague Heather will now speak about in more detail.
Thanks, Katelyn. To effectively partner with your recruiter, it is important to first set your legal career goals. Legal career goals are like most goals, and they need to be specific, measurable, achievable, and timely. The first step is setting specific goals. Make sure to state your goals clearly. The harder you try to achieve a vague goal, the harder it will be to achieve. Ask yourself if your goal is specific enough. For example, your goal shouldn't just be, I want to go in-house. It should go into detail about how you're going to achieve that goal by potentially gaining law firm experience first, determining a specialized area of the law, making the move at the right stage of your career, and by strategic networking. When making a specific legal goal, make sure you factor in what salary you need to make and your work-life balance needs. If you need a fully remote or part-time role, be sure to discuss this with your recruiter. Further, remember your original reasons as to why you went to law school or why you went to school to obtain your paralegal certificate. Whether it was to go into private practice, eventually get a position in-house, or to work at a nonprofit, these are important considerations to think about when setting your goals. The second step is setting measurable goals. Make sure your goals are measurable in the short and long term. For example, my goal is to start this interim role with the intention of becoming a permanent employee within 6 months. Or my goal is to become partner after being at my firm for 5 years. Your goals should be a stretch for you. They should be realistic and achievable for sure, but they shouldn't be too easy. Your goals should challenge you in a healthy way. If you achieved something last year, think about how you can push that a bit further. Remember, given enough time and steps along the way, you can probably even accomplish goals that at first seem impossible. Finally, your goals should be timely. Each one should have a realistic timeline and deadline attached to it to help hold you accountable and to make sure you hit certain targets at certain times. It's hard to prioritize things that don't have deadlines. You also have to make sure it's actually possible to achieve the goal within your set timeline to avoid any disappointment. Throughout my career, I have assisted in the placement of attorneys and paralegals in contract roles that ultimately ended up going permanent. This is one of the main goals of MLA's interim group, and not only is it a benefit to both our clients and candidates, it's a source of great happiness and career fulfillment for me. Early in my career, I placed a labor and employment attorney at a large law firm after she left a large law firm to care for her children for an extended time. This attorney worked extremely hard and was on contract for over a year, but her hard work paid off and she was offered an associate position at the firm for her original class year. The candidate was thrilled, and she's still at the firm today. This is one success story amongst many. Remember, in determining your legal goals, to seek help when necessary. Some of your goals will need support, and it's important to recognize this from the outset. For example, you may need extra help developing new skills or flexibility to attend certification programs. Always remember that you can ask for help and support in achieving your goals. Your employer should want you to progress and develop, so supporting you on that journey will be in their best interest. Finally, remember to revisit your goals. Setting career goals isn't something you do just once. After all, if you set ambitious goals, those goals may take years and sometimes even decades to achieve. Make sure to set some time aside at various intervals to review and reevaluate your goals. Are you on track? If you're not, is it because of external factors, or do you need to adjust your expectations? It's important that you can be flexible with your goals for unexpected occurrences and also make room for goals that you had not originally thought of and now want to add to your plan. However, it's important to remember that goals should be a challenge and aspirational. That means you may not reach them all, and that's okay. Don't be too hard on yourself when it comes to succeeding. Setting achievable goals to progress your career is an achievement in itself, and any shortcomings can be learned from and added to a much bigger career development plan. Next, my colleague Jen Haas will discuss having realistic expectations regarding your job search.
Thanks so much, Heather. While you certainly should be ambitious in your career goal setting, as Heather just discussed, you must set realistic expectations for both short and long-term outcomes. You must keep your eye on the prize and your long-term career goals, but be sure to take the necessary and realistic steps for you to reach the success you're ultimately seeking. You also must be an active participant in your job search. The more competitive the job market, the more you must be actively involved and engaged with your recruiter and in your job search in order to find the position you want. The first place we start with this conversation is with your resume. You must be able to take a look at your resume from an employer and a recruiter's perspective. First, on a surface level, is it grammatically correct and does it visually flow? That is it consistent font, spacing, and bullet points? Then, on a deeper level, does your resume explain transitions between jobs? And if not, can you concisely speak to your moves or gaps on your resume? And does your resume highlight all of the experience a client is seeking that you do have? Please remember, your resume should mirror the bulleted job description you are applying to as much as possible. If your resume doesn't mirror the position description, then you must be willing to put in the work. If your recruiter asks you to partner with them to rework your resume to make it more marketable to their client, it is important you do so. For example, changing a bulleted point on your resume from something like drafting and negotiating a wide variety of commercial agreements to something more specific like drafting and negotiating agreements including NDAs, MSAs, vendor agreements, and services agreements could mean the difference in getting an interview or not. Choosing to ignore your recruiter's advice on this change may not only end your chance of getting an interview for that job, but also will shape your recruiter's perspective of you and may be the reason you don't get a call on a future job you might really want. For example, I know I personally have hesitated in contacting a candidate who was great for a new job I was handling because last time we spoke, they weren't as receptive to working with me to edit and adjust their resume. And they were also not great at communicating quickly with me previously. So the way you choose to interact with a recruiter really does make a difference. Remember, you must do your best to make yourself stand out, especially in this current market we're in. Due to COVID, the job market has just gotten that much more competitive. And if you're not coming from a top law firm and if you didn't graduate from a top law school, you must be even clearer in your delivery and your resume of what sets you apart so both a recruiter and a prospective employer can see why you're great for a position. Remember, you only have a few seconds to grab an employer's attention when they first read your resume. So be sure your most relevant experience for their job stands out and isn't buried deep down in your resume. The further down it is, the less likely it will even be seen before your resume is passed on. Next, let's talk about the market. At this time last year, this was a candidate market. Many candidates, both on the perm and interim side, were receiving multiple offers to pick from. Now, with unemployment rates where they are, we are finding there's a lot of great talent out there with many fewer jobs to pick from. As we discussed, you must put in the work. Communicate regularly with your recruiter. Be active in your networking. Be active on LinkedIn. Be willing to tailor your resume to every position you're pursuing. Be more open to taking recruiters' calls. Even if the job they are reaching out on doesn't sound ideal, have the conversation now as the next position they have might be exactly what you're looking for and now you're on their radar for that call. Be open to interim work. We are finding many clients are going this route given the uncertain times ahead. So it may be a great opportunity to get in with a company or an area of law you want to. Be realistic in your timeline to find a permanent job. In this current climate, many permanent searches have slowed down. So know that if you're not actively looking now but want to be in a new job this time next year, start getting your feelers out there and start having conversations with recruiters now. Be realistic in your salary expectations. Like everything in this current market, we are seeing salaries take a hit. As Heather said, be sure to know what your salary needs are, but be sure you can distinguish salary needs versus salary desires and be able to weigh that against all other factors that go into a new opportunity. For example, work-life balance, work fulfillment, commute versus remote ability, etc. And be ready to be more flexible when discussing salary. In summary, you must follow up with your recruiter, you must check the job boards and LinkedIn, and you must be sure to be active within your network. You must be willing to put in the work. Rework your resume as needed, be flexible when interviewing, and communicate quickly and clearly with your recruiter, especially on the interim side as speed is often of the essence. You must be ready to act fast in order to give yourself a chance to be considered for the position. You must also be flexible in the types of opportunities you're willing to consider in this market. Even if it may not sound like the ideal fit, take the call and hear the recruiter out. It may be a better opportunity for you than you think, or it may be that next call from that same recruiter is the one you've been waiting for. Next, my colleague Amber is going to discuss how to pull all of this together of what we've talked about thus far and start making a plan for your job search.
Thank you, Jen. Making a plan for your job search involves updating your LinkedIn profile, keeping an updated resume, and working with your recruiter along the way. So let's talk about LinkedIn. Plan to update your LinkedIn profile before you start your job search. Work with your recruiter to create a profile that will get the right attention and help you appear in more job searches. A recruiter can help you create an effective headline, identify keywords, and tell you what information is important for your profile. For example, if you are open to new opportunities, then it's very important to have that information in your profile. Without checking that box on LinkedIn, the chances of a recruiter contacting you about new opportunities are very slim. In addition to my advice, there are 3 systematically proven ways to help your profile appear in more job searches. 1, have an effective headline. Your headline does not need to reflect your exact title. Instead, it should reflect what people will be searching. So work with your recruiter to identify and use the right keywords in your headline. 2, state your location. You're far more likely to appear in a recruiter's search results if you are in the same location as the company that is searching for its next counsel. And 3, add skills and endorsements. Again, it's important that this section is filled with relevant keywords. For example, I was working on a real estate transaction role for a client and came across a lot of profiles on LinkedIn that listed real estate transactions as a skill, but nothing in the profile other than the keyword itself suggested that they were actually skilled in that area of law. So if you're not sure what skills to list or what keywords to use, you can work with a recruiter or look at other LinkedIn profiles. Look for professionals who have the same job as you or someone who's currently in the role that you're applying for. See what they have on their LinkedIn profile and how that profile fits into your work experience. Recruiters spend a lot of time reviewing resumes and searching LinkedIn for legal professionals in different areas of law, so we can quickly provide useful information to create a better profile. For anyone who is interested in learning more about creating a compelling LinkedIn profile, an information sheet is available in the handout section. Next, plan to update your resume. Keep an active document and update your resume every 6 to 12 months so that the information stays current and accurate. In addition, talk with a recruiter to make sure that your resume reflects current styles and industry trends. For example, having data privacy experience might have been irrelevant a few years ago, but it's very relevant to a lot of positions today. In addition to maintaining an active document, I recommend the following best practices. 1, keep it simple. Remove unnecessary adjectives and focus on your relevant work experience. 2, use relevant keywords. Again, a recruiter can help you with this because we review a lot of resumes and recruit for a lot of practice areas. You can also use a word cloud. And for those who are not familiar with word clouds, it's an online resource that identifies words frequently used throughout a job description. The more a word appears in the job description, the more important it is that you use that word throughout your resume. 3, communicate your value. If possible, use metrics that quantify your relevant success. For example, something like reduced internal contract turnaround by 50% shows a hiring manager that you improve the company in a significant way and you likely do the same in your next role. For anyone who is interested in learning more about crafting your resume, there's an information sheet available in the handout section. So at this point, you've updated your LinkedIn profile, you've updated your resume, so let's talk about working with the recruiter moving forward and what that relationship looks like. As a recruiter, I have spoken to a lot of legal professionals. The people that I've been able to help the most are the ones I understand the best. So time and time again, one thing has stood out to me, and that's the importance of being transparent in your conversations with a recruiter. The more we understand what you're looking for, what matters to you in your next role, and what you're looking for overall, the better positioned we are to help you get exactly that. So be honest about the type of work culture you're looking for, the type of lifestyle you want, and what your drivers are, whether it's work-life balance, personal connection, or the type of work you do. Next, let's talk about how recruiters can help you with the interview process. As the legal recruiter, I try to help any way I can. For example, if someone has an interview coming up, then I will send them whatever I have, from interview materials to details about the company and its work culture to information about the people that they'll be interviewing with. I've also scheduled mock interviews with attorneys and paralegals who have been with their employers for almost a decade and were nervous about interviewing for a new job because they hadn't done that in a while. More recently, during the pandemic, I did test runs with several attorneys who needed to prepare for their video interviews and didn't have experience using video conference platforms or doing virtual interviews. So those are a few ways that a recruiter can help you specifically during the interview process. Again, be transparent with your recruiter throughout this process. If you have concerns about anything after an interview, tell us. Sharing this information is not only important to building a relationship with your recruiter, but it can also help your recruiter down the road when, for example, it's time to negotiate an offer, because your recruiter will understand what's important to you and try to help you get that. And that leads to my final topic today, offer negotiations. I'm going to briefly discuss this topic because I know that salary negotiations are uncomfortable for a lot of people, but thankfully your recruiter can help make that process a lot more comfortable for you. Recruiters often negotiate offers and leverage their market knowledge to help you get the offer you want. Of course, it's important to have realistic expectations, but your recruiter is there to represent you and have those uncomfortable conversations for you, so you can focus on the synergies of working there instead of being uncomfortable. Again, I just wanted to briefly go over that topic, but for anyone who is interested in learning more about negotiating offers and counteroffers, my colleagues Jamie Dilbert and Haley Wynn will be presenting on that topic in our next webinar. So in summary, being proactive in making the best plan moving forward includes updating your LinkedIn profile, keeping an updated resume, engaging with your recruiter, having honest conversations with your recruiter, and leveraging your recruiter's expertise at every step of your job search. And that's all I have for us today. So I hope that this information was helpful. Thank you, and Heather, I'll pass this back to you.
Great. Thank you, Katelyn, Heather, Jen, and Amber for talking about how and why one should partner with a recruiter. I want to give everybody a few moments to type in some questions. We've had some come in throughout, but if you have any questions, please type them in now. And while you're doing that, I'd like to plug the next few webinars in our 6-part webinar series from our interim legal talent team. Next up is negotiating offers and counteroffers, which Amber alluded to. That will be on October 20th with Jamie Dilbert and Haley Wynn. And lastly, integrating into a new team will be on November 18th with Adam Harris and Shreya Regmig. If you missed any of these workshops featuring resume best practices, LinkedIn, interviewing tips, you can find these on our website, as well as any other webinars that Major Lindsey in Africa produces on the multimedia section of our website, mlaglobal.com. And lastly, one last thing, Amber mentioned several times a bunch of handouts in the handout section. If you haven't already noticed, there is a part of the console, the GoToWebinar console, that says handouts. You can make your way to that section of the console and you should see 3 PDFs attached, one on crafting your resume, one on how to create a compelling LinkedIn profile, and lastly, tips for successful virtual interviews. They are easily downloadable. Just click that button and they should download automatically onto your desktop. Not sure how they download onto your phone if you're joining us by phone, but don't worry, rest assured, we will send them out to you in our follow-up email. Okay, so ladies, I have a bunch of questions that have been coming in throughout. So I'm gonna just start with Heather. Heather, can you talk to us about how often you would suggest revisiting your legal goals?
Sure. This, of course, I think depends on the goal, but I think a good timeline would be every quarter. Each quarter, I would just try to make sure you're doing one positive thing to move towards that goal. I would also try to take the time to make note of how you're doing and make any adjustments as needed.
Okay, thank you. Jen, what tips can you provide that help candidates stand out to you on LinkedIn?
I think a lot of what Amber had discussed can be helpful as far as making sure you have a nice summary that's concise about your specific experience. Make sure all the keywords that you list are actually things that you do pretty regularly, so we know exactly the type of experience that stands out and what we'd be looking for.
Great. Okay. Katelyn, I have always thought face-to-face communication was the best and most impactful method, this person says, but with the current quarantine, that seems almost impossible. How can you still make that impact over the phone or via email?
I think that recruiters and clients both understand how difficult the current quarantine can be when trying to make a good first impression, and especially a face-to-face impression during the interview process. But it is important to remember that the same preparation for an in-person interview should also be taken for a phone call or a Zoom interview. So I always suggest to dress professionally, be timely, speak clearly, and come prepared with questions that show you did your research on the company. Your recruiter can always help you feel as comfortable as possible when they are doing interview prep. So that can help. The comfortability can definitely help make an impact.
Great. Okay. I'm going to give this one to Amber. Amber, do you recommend having a one-page resume, or is it okay to have a longer resume? I know that we get that question all the time.
Yes. So I think it depends on how much of your work experience is relevant to the position you're applying for. So, for example, if you're applying to an intellectual property role and have 5 years of work experience in that area of law, then that information is very relevant and you should elaborate on it. But if you started your career in, let's say, real estate transactions and somehow transitioned to intellectual property, it's still relevant in that it speaks to your experience as a lawyer, but it's not very relevant to an intellectual property role. So in that case, I would probably just state the name of the law firm, the dates you were employed there, your title, and maybe one bullet point about your work experience. But if that one bullet point creates a second or a third page, then I would just state the name of the law firm, the dates, and your title. Keep it simple, keep it relevant, communicate your value, and if you need 2 pages to do that, then I think it's okay.
Okay, that's good. And then, as Amber mentioned earlier, there is a handout on crafting a resume in the handout section that might be helpful to everybody. Next question for Katelyn. I've never worked with a legal recruiter before and always thought I would be just a number. How do I ensure that I stand out against all other candidates my recruiter is talking to?
I think being responsive and being proactive are great ways to stand out. By proactively and consistently reaching out to your recruiter, you will be a candidate that comes to mind quickly when a new role is launched because you are in that consistent communication with them. Also, it is important to respond to calls and emails in a timely manner. Usually, like Jen said, as time is of the essence in most of our interim roles, that is pretty imperative. These small efforts that you can choose to make really show that you are invested in your job search, and that alone will set you apart from others.
Okay. Jen, I got this a couple times actually. How often should you be reaching out to your recruiter to check in on your job search?
Yeah, I'd say it depends how active you are looking right now. I'd say, once a month is a good, starting point. And certainly, we will be reaching out to you as we have things that we're actively working on that, are relevant for your experience. But I always say it doesn't hurt just to check in, say, hey, send me an email, just checking in, want to stay on your radar, because it's helpful to do that since we are talking to candidates quite often. But the more aggressive you're being in your job search, I'd say the more often you could check in, and we'd be in closer contact.
Great. Okay. Heather, you talked about goals, and it says one goal that was mentioned was converting from a contract employee to a permanent employee. What would you say are the best ways of accomplishing that from what you've seen from prior candidates?
I think the most important thing to do is to just do your very best that you can in your interim role. I would take the position very seriously and work really hard. The main goal is to make yourself invaluable to your hiring manager and the company, so then when the time comes, they will really make a case for you to either get extended in your role or to move forward with a permanent offer.
Okay, and can I follow up with an add-on question to that, because it's asking about a temporary role? So if you take a temporary role while you're looking for the right fit, is that something that you should update on LinkedIn? And if so, how should you list contract or temporary roles?
I think it's really important to list it on your resume as well as on LinkedIn. I would say, just like you said, either consulting attorney or contract attorney or interim attorney. These are substantive roles that you would be taking on through MLA, and it's an important way to keep your resume fresh and recent. And I think they're a lot of times they're very helpful in finding your next career move.
I would assume so too. If you see that on there, it's a great way for someone to let you know that that person is open to doing interim work, either in the past or in the future. Okay, next question for Amber. Can a recruiter also help with the interview process? I think you talked a little bit about that. Can you talk some more, please?
I did, and we absolutely can. Like I said, I try to help any way that I can in the examples that I gave, which were, sending a candidate everything I have, from interview materials to information about the company and its work culture and the people that they'll be interviewing with, to scheduling mock interviews or doing test runs for virtual interviews. Those were made apparent to me because I understood the candidate and we communicated what would make them prepare or help them prepare for this interview. So those are just some examples of how I've helped candidates, but if there's something that would be helpful to you, just communicate that with your recruiter.
Okay, thank you, Amber. Katelyn, I'd like to connect with an interim recruiter. What's the next step or the best way to do this?
I always recommend the best way to start the conversation is through email to set up a time to speak in the future when it's most convenient for you and for the recruiter. As for the four of us, all of our contact information is listed on the slide in front of you. I know that each of us would be happy to help anyone listening or future listening on this recorded webinar, and we're happy to connect with you in any way.
And actually, that's a great cue because we asked the survey that we're going to ask at the end. One of the questions we do ask is if you are currently working with a recruiter or if you would like to connect with us. So if you are interested, please take the survey and indicate that.
Heather, can I add one thing to that?
Sure, go right ahead.
And I would just say that it's always helpful to send along your resume as well when you're reaching out to a recruiter, just so we have some background information.
Perfect. Okay. Can anybody tell me, and I'm not sure who to pose this to, what advice can you give to somebody who's looking who is looking for work out of their state or their current location during quarantine? Does anybody have any advice on that?
I'll go. This is Jen. I think, right now, most positions are, fully remote for the time being that we're seeing. So certainly on our website, we kind of have everything listed by location. So you can certainly kind of target that and make a connection with a recruiter in that area that you're really interested in, partnering with to pursue roles there. The benefit right now is even if you were in that location, interviews are happening virtually. So, there is, a little bit of an advantage there. If you're not in the location yet that you want to be, you still could get in the interview process.
Great. Okay, let's see here. I think that might be our last question because the couple that are still out there are duplicates of what we've gotten before, and there are a couple that are very specific to the individual. So I will say that if we didn't answer your question during today's call, one of these ladies or another member of our team will follow up with you directly to answer your question one-on-one. But I do want to thank everybody for joining us. Special thanks to Katelyn, Heather, Jennifer, and Amber for discussing how to best partner with a recruiter. We hope that you'll join us again next month on October 20th when we discuss negotiating offers and counteroffers with Jamie and Haley. And as previously mentioned at the end of the webinar, a brief survey will pop up on your screen. We really appreciate it if you take the time to fill it out. I promise it's short, and it also asks that question about if you're working with a recruiter or would like to. So thanks again for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again next month in October, and be well. Thanks, everybody.